Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Literacy Webinars presented by Gainbridge, a digital platform of financial products and member of Group 1001, an insurance holding company. My name is Cheryl Lala Chavez, and I'm joined every month by Lauren Williams, a four-time Olympian and certified financial planner. In each one of our episodes, we'll also have a Parity Athlete Ambassador. This month, we welcome Alexandria Glaudé, Team USA freestyle wrestler and 2021 Pan Am's gold medalist. Welcome to you both. We are excited to have you. Today, we're going to have a conversation on managing credits and credit cards, something that if an athlete doesn't have a strong foundation in, can get them in trouble later down the road. Lauren, we'll start with you, as always. Tell us why you became a certified financial planner and how managing your finances credit affected your past athletic career.
Yeah, I became a certified financial planner because I did not know anything about money. I had two different financial advisors that did not help me know anything about money. And I made some mistakes with my finances. So I wanted to kind of figure out what I should be doing and how to best understand how to organize myself. And that's why I became a certified financial planner. I was actually looking for education more for myself than I was looking to join the industry and become a financial planner initially, but I learned a plethora of information, and one of those things was credit. So I was able to buy a house pretty early on, but I didn't realize I didn't get as good of interest rate as I could have because my credit wasn't great, just because I didn't have a long credit history. And that's what I think a lot of athletes run into is that, maybe you come across a large amount of money because you go pro or you win an Olympic Games or something like that happens. Well, you need income for a couple years, but also you need a credit score that's going to support them saying, hey, you're not so risky because I see you can pay other things on time. And that was like a big problem for me initially, was actually building my credit.
Gotcha. So that makes a lot of sense about your foundation. Alexandria, as a current athlete, how much are you thinking about managing credit while you're, training, competing, all this?
Yeah, great question. I would say it's actually been on my mind now more than ever. And not just because I'm an athlete, but I got married last year. And so, my husband and I are looking into possibilities. Do we want to rent? Do we want to buy a house? And we started working with a lender just to see what our possibilities were. And credit was the big thing that, both of us are young. And so now I don't have a huge background, but it's on my mind and just trying to gather as much information as possible. Part of that is being on this webinar with you too. So I was actually quite excited at this opportunity because I'm tell me all you know.
Don't worry, we got you.
Help the girl out.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment to get married. And then now I'm sure you're thinking about to merge finances. Now you're talking about, home, credit, all of this stuff. So, Lauren, any advice there?
I would say definitely you want to work together as a team. As athletes, we know all about teamwork, even if we're in an individual sport. Teamwork is going to be integral in making sure that we're on the same page as it pertains to what kind of house we can afford and, how we're going to bring home the income to be able to cover the mortgage, still have fun, still save, do all the things. Sometimes one is a saver and one is a spender. That's kind of in most relationships. Even if both people are savers, one is a better saver than the other. So getting on the same accord and saying these are our collective goals and here's how we're going to achieve them is going to be a game changer. And then with the home buying process, I would say make sure that you get a realtor that is okay with you just peppering them with questions, because sometimes they get a little annoyed. They're like, this is too much, but their job is to serve you, help you understand. And so there's no question that is a dumb question. And you are actually providing them with income via the service they're providing. So ask everything you want. Don't be afraid.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, when we're talking about credit, credit can affect you in so many different ways, Lauren. So before athletes open a line of credit, like a credit card, they should have a checking account. We've kind of talked about that, right? Checking and savings account. We've also talked about fluctuating income sometimes for athletes as well. Once they open a checking account, how do they use checks and or debit cards and bank fees, in terms of how does that affect credit?
Yeah, you made a really good point about, the foundational pieces need to be in place before you move on to credit. So often, credit and interest or credit and investments are the two things that I hear people love, 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 love to talk about. And it's like, don't put the cart before the horse. You should not get your very first paycheck ever and go straight to the investing piece of the puzzle. In the same vein, you should not get your first set of income and go right to, I need a credit card so I can build my credit. We want to have some baseline things in place, and that is a checking account, a savings account. I like clients to have 2 checking accounts, one for their bills and one for their discretionary spending. So what does that do? That takes off the weight of like, oh my God, what about I can't pay my rent or my mortgage? You know that there's a certain amount of money, all the money comes into that account, all the bills get paid, and then you give yourself kind of an allowance in the other account that allows you to be able to spend freely. Like if it gets down to zero, you got to eat rice and beans probably for the rest of the month, but your bills still get paid and everything gets taken care of. So you kind of separate those obligations out from your discretionary spending. And then as we start thinking about this, it's like, well, I want to get a credit card. I want to start, getting the points, which is what is everybody's all excited about, the point piece of the puzzle. You don't want to start running up a credit card if you can't actually pay the bill in full, because not paying the bill in full is going to result in you paying interest, and the interest is going to be much more expensive than those points that you're getting. So people get all locked in on gamifying and points, but credit card debt is not a good thing. So you want to make sure you have like I said, the checking account, the savings account, and just a spending plan in place before you go on and move to the credit piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And we're going to talk a little bit later about just kind of making sure you do pay off, those minimums in full when you talk about credit cards. When folks have, a checking account, let's say, for instance, and I had never heard of this 2 checking account thing. So thank you, Lauren, for dropping knowledge on that. Are people still using checks and debit cards too? And, is that also affecting credit?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So your checks and your debit cards are not affecting your credit. That is money tied directly to your bank account. Your debit card is you make a purchase and money comes directly out of your bank account. So it's paid for. You don't have to worry about owing anybody anything. Whereas a credit card is like, hey, you don't have to pay for this right now, but you need to pay us later, usually about a month later. And it sometimes gets a little hard to keep track of with credit because it's a month later. You're swipe, ooh, having a good time. And then they send you the bill and it's like $3,000, please. And you're like, wait, what? Hold on a second. Whereas if you were swiping with your debit card and money would be coming right out, you would see your bank account going down, down, down. And it'd be a really easy way to track things and know like, whoa, let me slow down on my spending. Checks, on the other hand, it's good old fashioned paper where you write your name, you sign it, you put the amount in, you give it to someone, they have to go deposit it in the bank, and then it comes out of your account. It's a much slower process, but it is a way that a lot of people operate it, and checks are still a thing. I think much of our generation now and the athletes that are currently competing have not had to deal with checks as much, but it's important to know how to do one in case, rent is sometimes still paid with checks, very official things through the government require checks. So that is money coming directly out of your bank account versus a credit card where, like I said, you're borrowing money from someone saying, hey, I'm going to pay this later.
Definitely. Alexandria, let's dig into your financial foundations a little bit here. How much do you use checks, debit cards? Have you overdrafted, or are you familiar with like overdraft fees?
Yeah, so I actually was super excited that Lauren brought up the 2 checking accounts because that's something that we just did recently. So I was like, oh, okay, we're on to something there. We have 2 accounts. One is for our bills, like, all of the important stuff. And so that is something that I'm new to, but I'm excited and I'm glad to know that that's like a good thing to do. I have experienced overdraft fees before, like probably when I was younger, when I first opened my checking account with my mom, and she's just like, here's your debit card. Like maybe you'll have money on this sometimes, maybe you won't, sort of thing. And that was kind of the end of that spiel. So I didn't even know that existed until it happened. And then I just remember being like, Mom, like what is this fee? What is this random fee? So yeah, I still don't really understand. I know how it happens, but thankfully I haven't had any recently. So yeah, I have a checking account. We have a bills checking account, and that's kind of my foundation right now, and a savings account, I guess.
Yeah. And Alexandria, like I said, I applaud you for already like, okay, I separated these things out, and it was something that felt kind of like your intuition was like, this seems like it'll be easier for me to handle. The one thing I would say is don't end up with 50 accounts. I have actually, the most I've ever seen is 38. Someone had 38 bank accounts that they were trying to manage their finances with. And they're basically trying to make a budget out of all the bank accounts that they had. It's like, one, this is for travel. This is for, my hair done. This is for, all the different things. And, there's lots of different apps that would allow you to be able to kind of separate things out, in broader or in more precise sense. Like I said, self-care versus fitness versus all those different things. But, I'd say limited to around like 5 accounts as a maximum, depending on what your various situation is. Some people like to do like a long-term savings and a short-term savings. So if you're going on vacation or you're getting ready for Christmas, a short-term savings account. And then, your long-term savings be more like your emergency fund that kind of sits there and does nothing, or something else that, maybe you're saving up to buy a house in 5 years, those kind of things. So no 38 accounts is the one piece.
I mean, that person's wallet probably has to be met. Like, was there a debit card for every single one of those accounts?
You know what? I didn't ask that question, but that is a good one to be thinking of. And then as
brain.
Right. Yeah, no, it was definitely a new experience for me trying to work through that. But then the other piece of the puzzle, you brought up the overdraft fees, and it's something to be mindful of. And it really is frustrating because people who overdraft are people who have run out of money. And so it's like, why are you charging me a $35 fee when I already don't have any money? And then every time something else hits that I didn't plan for, you charge me $35 more. All you're doing is put me in the hole, and I didn't have money to begin with.
They're just taking you while you're down already. It's like, yes. But I'm just going to slip this extra little thing for you to worry about. You didn't even know it was coming.
And that is so tough. That's why budgeting and having a strong foundation is so important. But also you want to be mindful of the fees related to credit cards, because people are like, oh, I'm just going to do this thing easier because I didn't like that experience when I had, an overdraft with my bank account. So I'm just going to use my credit card all the time. Well, the thing you got to be careful of is the reason you had the overdraft is because you overspent. And so now the credit card is allowing you to spend a lot more, even more than you might have in your bank account. And they're saying, don't worry about it, pay us later. Well, guess what? There's fees related to that too. And so interest is that thing. And credit cards usually have double-digit interest rates. So you want to be mindful of, a 30% interest rate and how that could add up over time if you don't pay the credit card bill in full. So I know, Cheryl, I'm still in the show. Let me be quiet.
No. I think you're touching on all the right points here and really timely for sure. So to have this like financial foundation before you even start considering what is a credit card, right? If you're not managing your checking accounts and your debit cards and your checks, then how do you go into like managing your credit card and all the fees that are associated with that as well? Our sponsor, Gainbridge, has a financial education center on their website. This is kind of what we're doing, having these conversations. And on that website, under financial foundations, you'll be able to find the articles that we're referencing and talking about today on checking accounts, overdraft fees, credit cards, and why you should always pay the minimum balance on your credit card. These articles include tips on using your credit responsibly, including prepaid cards and mobile banking. So Lauren, let's get back to you about credit cards. How should athletes pick the right credit card? And what's the difference between the credit card and a prepaid card?
Ooh, this is a good one, because all the people want to know, like, which card is the right card for me? Give me that. Look at that, Alexandria. Give me the hack, Lauren. Which one? The answer is, it depends. It definitely depends. So as an example, I live in Dallas. Dallas is an American Airlines hub. So it makes sense for me to maybe get the American Airlines card because I'm always flying American. I can get the extra points and I travel a lot. There's somebody else out there that's like, man, don't really travel that much. I like to cook at home all the time and I buy groceries. Well, get the card that's going to give you 5 times the cash back on your groceries. There's no one size fits all. This is the best card for everybody. And the other thing is, some of these cards had annual fees. So forget about the interest rates that we just talked about. If you don't pay your card in full or your balance in full each month, you might have a fee. And usually they're about $95. There are some 0% or $0 fee or no fee, I guess, if it's $0 on an annual basis, but they usually don't have as good a points. So then there's like the $95 fee, which is kind of like the baseline card. And they've seen cards up to $550 as an annual fee. So you got to really make that card work for you, because you're buying things. You got to pay for the things you buy. If you don't pay for the things you buy, you have to pay interest. And then you have a $550 fee on top of that you have to pay every single year. It's like mind blowing. So which card is the right card for you? Sometimes that $550 fee can justify itself. If they're going to give you $1,000 worth of free stuff, it's like, okay, it covered the $550 and I got $500 still that I wouldn't have, normally had. But you have to be very, very careful. Like, what is relevant for the kind of lifestyle that I'm living, and what's going to be appropriate for me. Now, that prepaid piece of the puzzle that you brought up, great way to build your credit. So a prepaid credit card is when you put money, maybe take $500 and you put it toward the credit card, and then you spend the $500 off of it. So it works kind of like a debit card, but it's actually set up as a credit card, and it's to help you specifically build your credit. So they usually have pretty low balances, like $200 or $300. That way you're, just buy gas on the card and you know that it's already getting paid, and you put $200 or $300 more on it. So it works similar to a debit card, except for you're kind of filling the card up and then you're running it down. And you need to go out and look for the prepaid card, because that's not the same thing as like grabbing a gift card from the store that has like the little Visa logo in the bottom. That's not what the prepaid card is. That's going to build your credit. That's just a regular gift card. So.
Gotcha. Alexandria, what is your experience with credit cards or prepaid cards?
So I actually have a prepaid card now, and that was for the exact reason that Lauren just said, and that was to start building my credit. So growing up, finances wasn't really something that was super emphasized. And so, like I said earlier, I'm still learning and kind of, watching as many videos as possible. And when we were looking into, if I'm going to buy a car or buying a home, like I just didn't have a credit history, but I do have, student loan history. So that doesn't really look good applying for things. And even the credit cards that are out there, like if you were to watch the videos that are like top 10 credit cards just to start out, like I didn't even qualify for some of those, I think, like a few years ago. And so the prepaid card was really the only option, I think, or at least it seemed, to even just get started building my credit. So yeah, it was like she said, you just put $200, $300 towards it and try to put expenses on there that aren't too crazy, that I know I can pay off, and, don't smash the prepaid card till I can't, pay it back. So that's my experience so far. And I would say it's kind of helpful in the sense that now I've kind of got my foot in the door learning how to manage these finances between a debit card and kind of a credit card situation, but definitely would like to learn more.
Yeah, some people kind of poo-poo on like, oh, I have to get a prepaid card first. But I think it teaches financial responsibility, because, like you said, it doesn't give you a $5,000 limit to start out. So you don't have a chance to run up a big credit line and get yourself in trouble and spend years digging yourself out of debt. You're only able to spend what you put on that card. And so it's kind of already setting a good habit. So I'm not going to spend more than I earn going forward. And it's a great way to build credit. People are probably wondering, like, well, where do you build credit to begin with if you don't have this prepaid card? And what a lot of people's parents do is put their kids as an authorized user on their card, when they get to high school or something like that. And that's how they start to build credit. So if you're wondering how some of your peers might already have credit, it's generally something like that has happened. Someone's helped them gather some credit along the way. But no credit and bad credit are similar in the sense that you're not allowed to buy anything, but there's a difference. One is just like you said, you don't have credit history, whereas one is like you've done some really bad things and you've kind of got to show us you can do some better things.
Definitely. And Lauren, you bring up a really good point. So, there's so many different ways to build credit. Maybe it's a family member that's put their child on, their credit card as an added user or something like that, or the prepaid cards. When is it a good time for people to start like reviewing their credit score?
As soon as you know what a credit score is, it is a good time to review it. And so, like I said, people come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I come from an environment, I was fortunate enough that my family didn't do this to me, but where many of my friends, their parents use their social security number or, their information to put things on their credit. So the light bill, the parent couldn't pay it. They put it into the kid's name, then they didn't pay it. So before you turn 18, you already have bad credit, which is, like I said, different than no credit. And it's not because of anything you did, but it might be because of something someone else did. So if you're 15 or 16 and you're learning about this, you can still go look and see if you have a credit score, a credit report. You can go to annualcreditreport.com and they will pull a credit report for you. It's free. They do that 3 times a year, annualcreditreport.com. They don't give you a score unless you pay for it. So you don't necessarily need the score. You need to know what's on the report. So credit report is kind of like your report card, if you will. Are there A's or B's or C's or D's on it? And then the score is like, hey, here's the actual, 90%, 98% A or 48% F, like sort of thing. The number tells you kind of where you are in the range, but the actual report tells you what's on there that gave you that number in the first place. You definitely want to be checking your report to see, did someone else open up something on my behalf that I wasn't aware of, and start disputing those things if necessary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, for me, I didn't grow up knowing much about finances. And then to my dismay, when I actually did pull my credit score, I found out that family members had used my social security number. And so, this was really typical of the culture and the environment that I was in. I'm an immigrant, first gen American, and so it was really typical. And when I kind of confronted those family members, it's like, this is what we do. And while they didn't trash my credit, which was great, it also was like completely like violating, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, this is not something I'm okay with.
Yeah, no, it's a tough situation. And like you said, it's exactly as you described, various cultures, various backgrounds, various socioeconomic classes. It's a more prevalent thing than it is in some others. And some people are kind of baffled, like, huh, what? That's a thing? People do that? I'm like, yes, they absolutely do it. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't trash it though, because that could be something, like you said, you spend years trying to get your good name back, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't, which was great. But now, even to this day, 25 whatever years later, I still always have one of those alerts on my credit just in case, right? If somebody else is using it, I always have like one of those alerts just in case. So it is kind of a pain for me, because if I'm going out to like buy a car, let's say, it has to be run through extra security, but I'd rather do that.
I mean, you also bring up a good point about the idea of like, how long does something stay on? So 25 years later, those things have dropped off, but 7 years is the length of time that your report stays valid. So if you made a big mistake at some point in your life, it's going to stay on that credit report for 7 years. The longer time that goes by, so, you're 5 years into your 7 years, it's going to carry a little less weight. So shouldn't stop you from being able to purchase things, but people are going to be able to see that negative, whatever it is, a mispayment or a foreclosure, or, something that whatever happened, all of those things will stay on your credit for 7 years, and then they'll drop off automatically. So time goes on and you get forgiven for your bad deeds that have gone by, but it does take a bit.
Good to know. Good to know. Alexandria, you had mentioned kind of learning more about, finances and financial literacy as an athlete. What have you done, or what are you doing to learn more?
YouTube University. Been super helpful talking to some of my older teammates and getting their insight on, what finances looks like for them. One of the big things that I had to learn a lot about was, paying taxes and being considered like an independent contractor, that sort of thing. So having to, keep receipts, keep a spreadsheet of our purchases, stuff like that. I won't say I'm great at it. I'm definitely not the financial advisor here. So, but yeah, like I said earlier, starting with the 2 checking accounts and then tracking my purchases, and then starting off with this nice prepaid card has been super helpful, and watching videos, being a part of this. I'm definitely going to be checking out Gainbridge's information on that website after this. I didn't know about it before, so I'm actually really, really happy to be enlightened in that way, because whatever knowledge I can get is knowledge I need. I definitely want to put myself in a better situation and hopefully, have some insight for later athletes.
Yeah, and that's excellent to be going and looking for the education and the information. And also, like you said, the biggest thing is like that you're getting it from reliable sources. So like a big company like Gainbridge, or, some place where, you can verify. So I like .gov websites, because they give you factual, like, I don't know about this tax rule or something. Like irs.gov is not the most fun website to read, but it's going to make sure it gives you accurate information. Where you don't want to be getting your information from, TikTok. Don't do it. There's a lot of influencers out there. There are some people that are credible, that are trying to make it fun and educate people, but also there's a lot of scams. So you want to be careful, because it kind of gets hard to figure out like what's right versus wrong when you go with everybody's out there doing a dance and telling you like, don't pay your credit card bill in full. You're like, oh, this is fun. Like, I don't need to pay it. No, don't do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So that's just because that's a really good point, because I am on TikTok, so I see a lot of videos on there. There's so much information. out there on how to, become financially literate. And that's just kind of a phrase I've heard circulating a lot, quite a bit. So you had mentioned earlier, you ended up in this role by trying to learn more. So what were kind of your steps getting yourself to where you are now?
Definitely. So like I said, I ended up taking the certified financial planning coursework, which is kind of a bit overkill, I think, if you're just trying to educate yourself and not get into the industry. But some of the things that, like I said, that were helpful were, one, creating a budget and like working through what is an actual budget. What do I need a budget for? What are my goals and my values? Not just because the world said you need a budget, but like, what do I want for my life and why would I make a budget? And then moving on, like, oh, okay, retirements and investments. Okay, well, why would I need retirement or investment? Asking those like reflective questions to say, oh, okay, you're right. I probably don't want to work for forever. So I need to grow my money in some way, somehow. What options do I have available? And then, like you said, going to people that you trust. So your teammates have probably already gone through this process. Some of them set up S corps or LLCs and things like that. It's like, well, why did you decide to do that? So it's kind of, you gather information, but you also verify that information, because they might have set up an LLC and they didn't need to, or they might, have used that SEP IRA when they should have used a solo 401k. But it's like, you don't know that those things exist unless you ask someone. So it's like, I found out about those things and like, okay, there's a SEP IRA. All right, let me read everything I can about SEP IRAs, or watch, a good video website or YouTube website that I like is called 2 Cents. Where it's done by a certified financial planner. So it's really good educational information. And they also are published on PBS. PBS does a lot of due diligence to make sure that, people are not given just crappy information out there. So it's like finding the information. It's easy, but it's also like, where did the person who's giving me the information get the information from, and why are they a credible source? So like always, like I said, trust, but verify.
Yeah. And so, another credible source that we've been talking a lot about is Gainbridge's Financial Education Center. There's an article there that you touched upon earlier, Lauren, and it's why you should always pay more than the minimum balance on your credit card. So, Lauren, can you walk us through why this is so important?
Yeah, and I love that Gainbridge put this together because, like you said, it's a great free resource that allows you to be able to get more educated. And they're a reputable financial institution. So why is it important to pay more than the minimum? Because you don't want to pay interest on your credit. So you bought something and it cost $100 and they tell you that the minimum is $15. Guess what? You only paid $15. There's $85 that you did not pay. And what are they going to charge you? It's probably something like 29% interest. That's a lot of money to be adding on to the $85 that you borrowed, especially if you have the whole $100 in the first place to pay off. There is a big misnomer out there that you should pay the minimum only because you're paying on time and it's going to build your credit and you should keep a balance on your card. Absolutely not. You want to pay your card in full every month, and you want to set up your finances in such a way that when the credit card bill rolls around, you are able to pay it in full. So we don't want anyone paying the minimum, because the minimum leads into a really long period of time that you take to pay off that credit card, and also tons and tons of interest. So suddenly, before you know it, that $100 thing that you bought ended up costing you $230 over time. You paid more than double for that one hairdo. Probably rained that day and then you didn't even get to wear it as long as you wanted to anyway. Wasn't worth the $100, and it definitely wasn't $230 worth of money. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. And Alexandria, how do you feel about, having this sort of budget and financial foundation in terms of paying everything off in full every month? How does that change kind of what you've been doing or how you've been thinking?
Yeah, I think it's honestly a helpful tool to think about, because I have to then spend responsibly. Because if I'm being honest, I do like to shop. I love my Lululemon or, just extra stuff to work out in and whatnot. And so having to think about paying, what I actually can spend makes me think a little bit more consciously about the choices that I'm spending on, not running up more than I actually can afford and putting myself in a further not great position. So I will say it's definitely helpful to think about not wanting to spend more than I actually can afford. Like you said, Lauren, if I actually have the $100 to pay off, then why would I not just pay it off? Otherwise, maybe it's not something I should be purchasing in the first place, or maybe it's something that I can wait on. So
definitely. Lauren, when an athlete gets into credit card debt, or is using their credit card a little too much, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is put it down. The first thing you can do is put it in the drawer, put it in the closet, put it in the freezer, give it to a friend, cut it up. There's lots of different options as it pertains to the overspending piece of the puzzle. And then you want to switch over to using your debit card for a bit. So if you can use the credit card responsibly, you can use the credit card. But when you can't use it responsibly, then you kind of have to hold yourself accountable and stick to only spending what you have. So that's the key piece of the puzzle. And if you have credit card debt that's built up, it may be that you do a little bit of sacrificing on the front end and saying like, okay, I'm going to, eat out less for the next few months while I pay extra toward this debt, or I'm going to do, XYZ thing. Is all sorts of different options to what you can do to kind of get your credit card debt taken care of.
Definitely. And as we kind of wrap up here today, Alexandria, as an athlete, what's important for you to tell other athletes regarding financial literacy?
Yeah, I would just say that the moment you hear about it, start asking questions, and the sooner that you can learn more, I would definitely recommend. This is something that I wish I could have learned more about when I was younger, but I'm still young now. So I think if you can put yourself in a good position for later in life, it doesn't hurt to ask around now, ask your teammates or whatever resources you have. So, it doesn't hurt to get ahead of the game. It can be daunting, but just try a little bit here and there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lauren and Alexandria, for such an engaging conversation on managing credit. I appreciate both of you joining me this evening. I want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, Gainbridge, a digital platform providing direct access to trusted financial products and free financial literacy education, giving your future a boost. Click on the link to find the articles we talked about today, as well as many more resources on financial education and literacy. We'll see you next time. Thank you.